Well, hey there, everyone. How you doing today? Happy Sunday to you. This is a live stream on Learn Biz, the podcast. And today we're going to be spending some time talking about evictions. Um, Many of you know I'm in real estate. I'm Lisa K. Crawford, and I watch what's going on in the real estate market. As we all should be paying attention to what's going on around us in general. Yesterday, I saw a news article about how evictions are on the rise here in South Florida. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about that. And you might think like, oh, what might this have to do with growing your business or anything to do with legacy? Well, honestly, a lot. Um, Stability means a lot in families. And if we're seeing signs that people are losing their places to live, their residences, that means trouble. That means problems. So we want to look at some of these things. It's a very serious issue in our country, and it's a growing issue. That's why, as a realtor, I'm always telling people like get in where you fit in and try to own real estate and get qualified for what you can afford, because I think things are getting tougher, quite honestly. So we want to talk a little bit about this eviction market that's growing across the country. I'm going to share with you guys the news article that I saw, in fact, that made me start kind of paying attention to what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this is the news article that I saw yesterday that made me kind of think about this issue. So let me share my screen and make this a little bit bigger for everyone to see. Okay, so we're going to stop that right there for just a moment. We're going to stop it right there. So that's the article that I actually saw that made me think, what is going on? We hear these trends happening across the country, but it's getting worse. And for the people who are dealing with it, it's really, really bad. Obviously, if you're not in a position to have to deal with evictions and homelessness and things like that, then that's a wonderful thing. But it is a growing uh, crisis in this country, which will have to be dealt with. And as far as like the South Florida market, what I'm seeing here is that pretty much there is a gradual erosion of the middle class, period. It's happening as we speak. Things are happening that is really shaving off the middle class and the, entire diversity aspect of people living in the same communities and shopping at the same places, frequenting same restaurants and places to eat, or that's the same thing. But clubs, entertainment, you name it. It's diversity is very important to me. So I know that a lot of people, when they're shopping for places to live, I think a lot of people are very, very definitely into diversity. There are some that aren't, of course, but a lot of people are. And this, because of the economic situation here in South Florida where people are able to come in and purchase and spend money. It, keeps the prices high, keeps the rents high. And then the people that may have been able to live here for years now are struggling to be able to rent here and in some cases to own here. All right, so there is another share that I want to put up here on the screen. And this is an article that kind of deals with the issues of evictions in general across the country. So let me share this with you. All right, so I think we got that part together. This is a very interesting article. So check this out right here. And I'm going to press play.
Eviction rates nationwide have been steadily rising, and the worst cities are seeing eviction filings increase by more than 60%. In cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, Dallas, Houston, rents have been increasing by as much as 30%, even 50%. And experts say that rent increases anywhere are going to lead to more poor people and struggling families being evicted and kicked out onto the streets.
So therein lies the problem. People being kicked out of their homes, that type of thing, onto the street. Obviously, that leads to more instability with regard to families, people being able to start businesses. What about the children? Children are affected a lot. Let's keep listening here and learn more about what we're dealing with across the country.
In Sunbelt cities where people are migrating to, like Durham, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, there's just increased demand, and landlords can basically get away with raising the rent however much they want because there will be someone who can afford it.
Okay. So when you talk about rent and the how the prices just keep doubling in some cases, like the lady said, there will be those who can afford it, but obviously there's going to be a large group that cannot continue to afford these rapid increases in rent. So that is a growing problem. And let's continue to see what she has to say about that. Hold on for just a second. Get my share screen back up. Hold on, guys. But as you can see, these are issues that are that we're going to have to deal with.
When a family is evicted, it ignites a snowball effect of a problem. When you have an eviction record, it makes it incredibly hard to get into an apartment for years down the line. Job loss is very much correlated with eviction, as well as your kids having to change schools. It just creates a lot of instability.
That's it. That is a big part of why we need to pay attention to what's going on with evictions across the country, because like she said, it's not just the eviction. A lot of times it's correlated with job loss, and a lot of times these are very vulnerable families with children, and children have to get pulled out of schools immediately a lot of times because of the eviction, snatched up, and they have to kind of go wherever and start over. So these are the kind of issues that our society is facing. Um, you know, as a realtor, I help anybody buy and sell. But just the same, I definitely have to be concerned about the trends in our country and what's happening with vulnerable families who can't afford to pay these high prices for rents. Um, Yet alone, I mean, it would be nice to see these families be able to be in a position to be able to start getting pre-qualified to purchase, right? But the way some of the trends are happening, some of these families are so far down the line that, in terms of somebody like me working with families to help them get pre-qualified, um, and helping them to get through that process, so I can help them buy or sell. We have so many families in this country that are so far depressed down that they're not even at the level to consider things like that. So it's something that we have to be concerned about. You may not hear it being talked about a lot, but it is definitely a growing problem. Now, I want to spend some time. The last part of this is looking at an article from Eviction Lab. It's actually their research that they produce for Broward, some research for Broward and Miami-Dade, and then some of the research is in general about what's happening in general in this country. So let me try to get back to that screen there so we can pull up this article. And the question that I want to ask you is, who do you think is getting evicted the most? Who do you think is getting evicted the most of all the different ethnic groups that are out there? Who is this happening to the most? The next question you might ask is why, but at least let's look at who it's happening to the most and some of the statistics that have to deal with that. So let's see, did I share this correctly? Hold on, guys, give me just a second. I gotta pull this back up. Give me just a second. I'm gonna reshare my screen. I'm getting better at this. It definitely seems like I'm getting a little bit better at navigating this system. Not always the easiest, but we are working through it. How about that? Okay, so what I think I'm going to have to do is stop sharing my screen, come back and reshare my screen. And let's see if we can do it this way. I think we have this article up. It doesn't appear to be that big though, huh? So maybe if I drop myself way down here in the corner and can I make this bigger? Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. All right, maybe there. All right, so the very first article or the very first media piece that I showed was from the local news here in Fort Lauderdale. And the lady was speaking about the growing numbers of evictions here in South Florida. Now, she is from Eviction Lab, and they're a group that keep the statistics on evictions nationwide. Excuse me. And this is from, where is this? This is from October of 2023. And the name of this piece is Who is Evicted in America? And basically what they did was they went back and grabbed a bunch of data from the U.S. Census Bureau, and they put all that together regarding a full population of renters living in households threatened with evictions. And they looked at the period between 2007 and 2016. And they were able to just, come up with some trends and some things like that regarding evictions. And what they're saying in this article is that we, quote unquote, we are able to demonstrate for the first time the sheer number of people facing the threat of eviction, the scale of racial ethnic disparities in eviction risk, and the heavy burden of eviction faced by children, the most vulnerable, right? That's problematic. So across the life course, the risk of experiencing an eviction, a deeply traumatizing event, is highest during childhood. So children have to deal with evicted children face increased risk of food insecurity, exposure to environmental hazards, academic challenges, and a range of long-term physical and mental health issues. And then as far as numbers, it's saying here, we now know that nearly 3 million children face these type of risk every year in what is the richest country, presumably in the world, right? So let me go down here a little bit more. As you can see, there's a little graph there, and you may not be able to see it too well, but just look at that orange bar at the top of the graph. You see beneath the orange part, it turns yellow. So that orange bar goes all the way across the page. And what this is representing is that children under 5 make up 9% of those living in rentals, but 12% of those affected by an eviction filing every year. So young children are definitely affected by this. Article goes on to say that 7.6 million renters face the threat of eviction annually. 7.6 million. And for many of us, that's hard to count to, right? And that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people who face evictions every year. Not saying that 7.6 million are evicted, but I believe the numbers show that a little more than half are actually evicted. Oh, here we go, right here. So it says here, for the first time, we're able to count all the people living in those households. We find that on average, 7.6 million individuals were threatened with eviction every year between those periods of time we mentioned. Just over half of those individuals, 3.9 million, actually lived in a household that received an eviction judgment. So 3.9 million, or you can round that up and say about 4 million people a year actually end up going through the eviction process on an annual basis. Again, we just talked about the fact that children face the highest eviction rates. Every year, 2.9 million children under the age of 18 are threatened with evictions, and 1.5 million are actually evicted. These children represent 4 in every 10 people that are threatened with eviction every year. Let's see. I won't be able to go over every single thing here, but if you look at this graph right here, it deals with eviction rates by gender and a 5-year age group. So you can see on the female side that women are definitely, there's more longer lines on the female side. So they're definitely dealing with evictions on a greater basis than men. So you can see that. So just to account for that chart there, it says the risk of eviction declines at older ages, but slowly. Around 1 in every 9 renters is threatened with eviction every year. So the eviction rates kind of slow down in the older ages. You can see that. So you can see that evictions get more heavier. It looks like the age 40s, 40 to 44, 35 to 39 is pretty huge right there. Obviously, we talked about that young people are dealing with evictions in huge numbers from 0 to 4. age 5 through 9 on both male and female side. Those lines are long. So these are some of the stats that we're looking at. Now, one of the last things I wanted to talk about here, but this is an interesting stat before we get to that. Households that include children are filed against for eviction at high rates. We talked about that. The eviction filing rate for adults living with a child was 10.4%, double where there were adults just without children. So it's twice as much for the evictions. If a child is in that household, the risk is a lot greater. Now, this is the last. I asked you, who do you think the evictions affect the most in terms of ethnic groups across this country? You probably guessed it. I'm not sure. You probably said Black folks, right? If you did, that's true. Black renters face a disproportionate burden of evictions in America on an annual basis. Hugely disproportionate. Less than 1 in every 5 renters in America is Black. So that's almost 20%. But over half of all the evictions filings in this country are against Black renters, and that number is 51.1%. So while we don't rent as much, it says less than 1 in 5 are renters. I think renting is higher. I'm not sure about that stat. It doesn't strike me as it seems like that number is higher on renters in terms of people of color, African Americans in particular. But just looking at this, you can see that half of the filings are against people of color, Black folks in particular, 51.1% on an annual basis. This means also that Black renters face far higher risk of evictions than any other group. We just went through that. Again, through this time period that we just mentioned, roughly 1 in 5 Black adult renters were living in a household filed where eviction was filed, and 1 in 10 were evicted each year. By contrast, on average, 1 in 24 white adult renters was threatened with eviction, and 1 in 40 was actually evicted. So again, with Black folks, 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 on the actual eviction. With white folks, 1 in 24 on the threat of eviction, and 1 in 40 on the actual eviction. So again, when we talk about huge disparities, that's where we're getting that from these statistics. Now, eviction rates and filing rates for Hispanic adult renters were comparable to those for white renters. Asian renters consistently had the lowest eviction, filing, and eviction rates. All right. So there you have it. There you have it. All right, so let me get up out of here. I keep wanting to leave this, but then this is one last thing. Let me read this. Evictions risk declines with income, but racial disparities are large. So poor households are at the greatest risk of eviction. As household income increases, the risk of being threatened with eviction falls. However, as we show in this figure I'm about to show you, the pattern is shaped by the disparities in eviction risk that they documented by race and ethnicity and the presence of children. Within every income category, Black renters, particularly those living with kids, are at a greater risk of eviction than their white peers. And again, let's look at this chart. Can we get to it? So you got Black. These are eviction rates for all renters by race and ethnicity. So the line that's at the top represents Black people. The green line represents white people, and the orange line represents everybody. So that's kind of like the average of where everybody falls in. So again, a huge disparity in eviction rates in this country. And the problem with that, obviously, is that it means that we're dealing with situations where there's less stability with regard to maintaining households. There's less stability when it comes to education, employment. So many things follow the problems with eviction. And while you don't hear it being talked about a lot, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. So let us all be mindful that we have a lot of work to do in this country to kind of reduce some of these disparities, the economic disparities that exist across the board, so that more American families will be able to truly participate in what is called the American dream, right? It should be something that can be enjoyed by all Americans, irrespective of skin color, right? But we're finding that these patterns, disparaging patterns, are following skin color. So, how do we fix it? What do we do? What's the cure? What's the cure? And as we look around the country and you look at neighborhoods that you once used to have a middle class, and that middle class is disappearing or gone, what's happening here? So let us make sure that we're very aware and that we are awake when it comes to America's true status in terms of housing and availability, affordability, and evictions, and what's happening to the people who are being evicted every year. All right, so that's what we want to talk about today. I hope at least this type of topic gives you something to think about. We obviously my goal, and I know Sandy's goal, is to bring some awareness of issues to people on this platform and to talk about things of concern. We focus on entrepreneurs a lot, but in order to get people to the level where they can focus on growing businesses and growing economically, it looks like we have a lot of work to do that's just dealing with the basics in this country. How people are going to survive, where they're going to live, where they're going to go to school, how we're going to stop especially Black and brown families from suffering so much while, white families enjoy so many privileges and economic transference benefits. And so I guess, if you're in the position where things are great, you don't really have much to say, but it is an American problem. Just remember that. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off for now. I'm Lisa Kay. If you guys need any help in the areas that I work in, which is real estate sales, helping people buy and sell real estate, you can definitely reach out to me. Greetings at Lisa Crawford Sells Homes. Just email me and I'll be glad to chat with you. And also, if you have any questions about probate and estate planning, which is the other work that I do, I'll definitely be glad to help you, and reach out to me by calling my office at 954 870 7600. You guys have a wonderful day. Lisa K signing out on Learn Biz, the podcast. All right. Take care. Bye.